Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you, of course, from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I, also from Central Florida, am hailing on the young 20-something Professor Pixel. So tonight's movie we're going to discuss briefly is Creed 3. And as you know, Professor Pixel, I'm up here in the control tower overlooking about 5 to 10 pristine acres near a tiny lake where Max and Daisy, my German Shepherd, Czechoslovakian Reds, short-haired, patrol the grounds and keep us safe so we can spend some time discussing some eccentricities when it comes to movies. And for me, Creed 3, I think the best way to summarize it, um, besides jumping into it here with some facts and figures about loving or hating it, Creed 3 to me, the best way to describe it is this. It's its own movie, a Creed movie, for better and for worse. And I'm going to expound on it because there's a lot of things I thought were done very well and professional. And there's a lot of things I do not like about this film. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just very up and down for me, mostly on the downside personally. But professionally speaking, I understand that a lot of people like it. It's doing really well. There'll be spinoffs and other things coming forward. But everything that could go wrong with today's movies went wrong in this movie, in my opinion. We're going to dive right in here in a moment. But what's your initial take? What are some of the things you want to talk about?
Um, I know that I can almost agree that it is its own animal and it tries to be, but I think it's actually I think it's really good. I was surprised with how much I enjoyed it. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right from the bat. Because when you talk about a movie in the Rocky franchise and it doesn't have Rocky, where are you going to go? Well, it becomes its own animal. And I think that it's really good. The way that I would describe it actually is Rocky 5, but done well.
And I'll disagree with you on that because I know Rocky 5 considered the bastard movie, and while it's probably the least entertaining out of all of them, therefore the worst, and everyone will say, no, don't worry, Rocky 5 sucks. See, the flip side of it is this. Obviously, this doesn't exist without the Rocky character and Apollo, how strong he was and everything else too, so I don't really necessarily have a problem with that. We've seen everything that's happened here before, which can happen and does happen. There's nothing exciting about it. We're going to talk about the fighting here in a moment, but for me, this one obviously lacking Stallone's involvement, and not just his character, Rocky, but any insight he may have as far as the writing of it and how to develop things, because it's a Creed movie, so it's Michael B. Jordan's, and so it stands on its own 2 feet. So actually, of the 3 Creed movies, seriously, even though the first one was solid and the second one was meh to me, this one is the best, I think, of the 3 Creed.
I
Now,
agree.
relatively speaking, well, I'm glad you agree. But here's the thing. I think it's safe to say that when we see this movie, no matter about some of the specific technical aspects, it's always a problem in the film, even though they spent time fleshing out the bad guy, allegedly the bad guy. When that bad guy overpowers the good guy, in terms of character and charisma, it's a bad recipe. You know, the purpose of having a foil, a villain, the flip side to you in the movie is to make you look good, so you both do it. And unfortunately, even though I like and saw the heel turn coming a mile away, I think everybody watching this movie did. I was really impressed by his performance. Not Michael B. Jordan. I have to say this straight. Michael B. Jordan's a decent looking guy. He's not very big. People are going to say, "Oh, he's jacked. He's ripped. He's whatever." Hey, he put in the work to put on about 20 pounds because he was scrawny as hell. Did a lot of boxing. I give him all the credit for doing the work for all that. But when you got a guy like this that's just head and shoulders above him, it's just absolutely ludicrous. And frankly, Michael B. Jordan, there's several scenes in here where I'm watching him going, I'm just not buying what he's selling. And for 3 films now, he just seems like, you know, the rich kid, the son of a rich guy. He has no personality. He has no charisma on screen. Obviously, I haven't seen everything that he's been in. I'm sure I keep hearing he was awesome in The Wire, which I did not see. Everyone keeps telling me to check him out on that. I just he's a charisma vacuum, and him and his relationship with his wife have zero chemistry. She comes across as the nagging, unsupportive woman, and he has to sit there and talk about his damn feelings and all that. But it's the same stupid story, and so they spend all their time really doing a great job cultivating his opponent. And while I like that, I think it's in stark contrast to Clubber Lang from Rocky 3, where you didn't see Clubber and you went, "Wow, man, he's a one-dimensional character." And the more I think about it, the more that was really the point. You're supposed to be terrified of him when he came on screen, and you don't know about his background other than he was poor and he's from the streets, and he represents everything that Rocky was, and that was the whole point. Clubber Lang was there to elevate Rocky. Here, even though you could talk about how they dealt with, not bromances, but different sides of the socioeconomic ladder from people growing up in a destitute house. To me, this is his movie. It has nothing to do with Michael Jordan, and I got to give him a lot of credit for it. I thought he looked the role. I thought he did well. I came away impressed by him and his performance, and that's not a good thing for the Creed franchise, in my opinion, because it makes Michael B. Jordan look the same or worse.
I disagree. I think Michael B. Jordan was great in it. So
Give me something specific. Let's talk about that.
Something specific with Michael B. Jordan?
Yeah.
I mean, when we go ahead and started out, him running, what is it called? Creed Athletics. Mm-hmm. Him being retired. Him going ahead and him running the gym. I loved that element. It reminded me actually a lot of Apollo in Rocky 3 before they start training, obviously.
Right.
He's got the swagger. He's got the suit. He's got that all. And what really this movie is addressing is, one, his past, and how it's an anchor that comes to face him with Jonathan Majors, who I agree is brilliant. But I think that I thought Michael B. Jordan was great as Adonis in this.
Wow, totally not feeling it at all. So much so that, he's basically got one or two expressions on his face the whole movie, and, he just doesn't do it well. And while he might, look good in a suit and all that, he should just go heel out, because I'm just not buying him as a baby face. And, the story of, Major's character, getting the 1 in a million shot and everything else too, just like Rocky. Okay, I'll let a lot of that stuff go. It doesn't really bother me. But, I mean, it's one of those things where, he invites him in, shares him his life. But the writing of it, again, makes it where you're sympathetic towards him and not towards Michael Jordan. So it's like, okay, you're Apollo's son. You're supposed to have a certain amount of charisma. You don't. Felicia Rashad, when she's on screen, totally owns it. And I'm talking the character here as well as the actor. Okay. So with the character, we find out that, and I don't know how much of a spoiler it is, because it's these layers are revealed during the course of the movie, which I thought was done well. We see, the flashbacks when they were young, how he punches a guy named Leon and then runs off. But Majors is the one that ends up going to prison for it and comes out and wants a shot. And he was an up-and-comer at the time, so now he's older. And you find out that he wrote letters to Apollo, which his mom kept him away because his mom said, to Adonis, because his mom was like, well, I felt he was a bad influence on you. And he's like, yeah, well, you really didn't know what happened in there. There's meat on the bone for like who's hiding it from who, and him feeling shame and guilt. And just like he describes, Creed's like, well, I tried spending so much time forgetting about the life and concentrating on my current life, that you're like, okay, I get why the bad guy would be upset. But then at the end, it's like, oh, it's no big deal. We just got in this big old fight after everything else there too. And you got to go one way or the other with that. I don't think you have it both ways, because it made it seem like it wasn't all that important. And I don't even care about the title fight itself or what it represented. They did such a great job, like I said, to him, but this guy lied to his family. He invited him into his home. I like the stepping up in confrontation out there on the beach after he'd won the title. The mano a mano stuff like that was set up well. But we know Rocky's going to come in. We know he's going to win the stupid fight. There's absolutely zero electricity or drama for that. And we'll talk about the fight stuff here in a moment. And so to me, I look at it again going, okay, nothing is happening in this movie that elevates Apollo's character. If anything, it makes him look, or I'm sorry, I keep saying Apollo because I love Apollo so much, but Adonis, because he's the same as when he started out, hasn't really learned his lesson. I mean, he's just there, and you don't feel like he's gone through trials, and overcome some harsh obstacle or whatever like that. He's still a rich guy living in a rich house with really rich guy problems.
I mean, I don't see what you mean by rich guy problems. I mean,
okay, what's the hardest he had it in this movie? He gets his training montage for a little bit, and just we don't even have to dive into it unless you want to make a comment. I thought the music sucked in this movie. I mean, they got away from all the Rocky stuff. They tried doing their own stuff, and I felt like I was watching like a soap opera rather than music that was exciting that was getting me primed up with the fight. I'll just simply
Well,
say
that
that.
I'm going to say partially that's because Rocky is a soap opera. It's always been a soap opera.
No,
It's
no,
always.
I don't dispute that. I'm talking about it was a negative energy with the music rather than go,
So
fuck yeah, I'm hearing this theme, I'm hearing this training thing, I'm getting all fired up.
I
It's
agree
just moody,
because
whiny stuff.
I
Again, rich
I
kid problems.
I agree because they didn't have, well, the Rocky theme to work with. They have the little bit that they can that they tie to Apollo, really, for the last three films, and to not hear a Rocky's theme at all did hit wrong. However, I am mixed on the training montage. At one point during it, I was like, this might be one of the worst. This might be one of the worst. And then there was a part of it that boosted it up towards the end. And actually, it was when the Apollo part of the Rocky theme comes on in, the soft victory towards the end after they cut out the rap.
Right.
But then with the fight, I was feeling the same way for a long time, even with their way of shooting it to make it dramatic, cut out the audience and all that. At one point, I was like, I'm not sure I'm liking this. But as it continued, I did feel that rise. And that's the most important thing. With these fights, with the training, you have to feel momentum. It has to make you want to get out of your seat and just
Punch somebody.
clap. Yeah. Well,
It's
you
true.
want to cheer them on, and I did cheer them on. Towards the end there, the theater was alive with energy. Everyone was sitting in the theater and they were loving it because it was a really good fight. I do think it was. When they punch each other at the same time, I don't care about the logistics of that. But when they do that and it knocks them out of their dreamscape, it just has such an energy. I think, again, I don't see what you're seeing with Michael B. Jordan. I do see emotion. I do see his acting ability. I think he did great. And
Okay.
I agree with
I
Jonathan Majors. He was
Jonathan Majors just owned
fantastic
it.
as a villain.
Well, Felicia Rashad, of course, playing Creed's wife there, his
No,
grandmother or
his
what?
mom.
His mom. She's had she thinks she had a stroke, and so the thing is what's going on. So she dies, and I thought it was kind of a neat scene in there where she's at the bedside and she's talking, and he thinks it's to her, but she's really talking to Apollo, and I'm like, oh yeah, just bury that. I thought this would have been great for him to go kind of heelish. Say, man, fuck this. I don't need all this. I'm gonna do it on my own. I don't need because I'm telling you, I did not feel the energy in the fights, and I do want to talk about the fights because here's the thing I really liked about the film. Now, Michael B. Jordan's this is I think his directing debut.
Yep.
I like the vision, a lot of the shots. The fight we get early on, we see where he's checking out the guy's body, and they do some of the slow motion capture, crash zoom sort of thing. And there were some punches where like sweats are coming off the guy's back, and they like I don't know if it's rotoscope or they do almost like the Matrix thing where they come around and some stuff. That was kind of interesting, and I actually, in a way, popped a little bit because the end fight when they do get rid of the audience and it's just those two staring at each other and they see each other when they're young kids. I like that. They got all philosophical. That was the coolest thing about the movie, and even the walk out there where they with the second or third fight there when his I don't know if he was when he was Mexican, I guess not Puerto Rican. When the champ count Felix came out, and then they had the Day of the Dead type characters coming out with the smoke and all that. That was badass, and there was color themes and all that too. But here's the problem
Ricky.
I had with the fight. I understand it's not real boxing, and growing up in boxing's golden age there in the 70s and 80s and seeing a lot of it, being a fan of a lot of those fighters, I liked how Majors kind of did the what's his name? The Rumble in the Jungle guy, George Foreman. He did his kind of what I guess you call it a clam or a claw thing where you have your arms go horizontal to block you. I like little things like that in there too. And I'm not even going to say about many punches you see don't land, because we know that happens. And I liked how they did have some flow to it because it was there. And I liked how they were looking at each other's body and sizing it up. But just when you base it off of anime and you have these really goofy things, it's one thing if you slip a scene or two in there, but when you actively promote that, yeah, and these boxing scenes were inspired by anime, that just lets the wind out of it, because I mean, all of a
Where
sudden
did you hear that? I don't
he's a
go looking
huge
for
anime
that.
guy, always has been. No, seriously. So no, here's the thing. Anime is its own culture, right? And
Okay.
so you have your different styles and all that stuff. And I'm certainly zero expert on it, but maybe pattern it after a particular fight, maybe pattern after a particular fighter or some combinations, or a really good fight or a good round or two, because we don't get the 12 to 15 round thing that we would get with Rocky and that kind of a build up, right? Which I don't mind that. But some of these punches and the way they go to do stuff, it's like, really? It looks cartoonish is my point. And that really took away to me any energy they would have had in the fight. So again, I like what they were doing alternatively with the existential philosophical kind of things with that, and each guy had their own like kind of color scheme too, if you noticed during the film. And that was very obvious. um of course, that doesn't really mean anything other than you associate, like I think green with Washington's character or whatever, I guess for jealousy or envy or whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, okay. So to me, the last fight didn't feel like a fight. It's just like, yeah, we got to come out. I'm going to call you out. Okay, let's go, bro. And then they have their training montage, and then the fight's over. Why? So they could kind of hug and kind of like, yeah, it's no big deal. The best thing, honestly, that this movie had was the introduction, not the introduction, but a slight little character thing that, despite its wildly diverse cast, is um, not the blonde hitting partner, but his daughter, who I guess is deaf, where the kid walks up to his daughter at school, tears the picture, and then she texts him, and then they're talking to everybody about it. And then, of course, mommy has a big bitch out fight about talking feelings out and crap. It's like, no, sometimes you got to fight, sort of thing. And at the end, he's in the ring with this girl, kind of making like she's fighting. I like that. Because you normally
Uh,
don't get that movies today. It's, we have to talk about our feelings. We have to understand each other. And at some point, it's like, no, you don't. And it's sad that the little girl almost has the right attitude about boxing than what we saw here about his shame and guilt for not visiting his friend for the 18 years he was gone or what like that, and ignoring him. It's like, yeah, you are a piece of shit punk, and yeah, this guy should be pissed at you, and yeah, I understand him, and yeah, that's why he's not the bad guy. Oh yeah, by the way, he actually looks like a real friggin' fighter. Yeah, I understand his motivations. You're just a whiny ass rich kid. That's, I mean,
see.
it
I
all
don't
ties
see it
together.
like that.
Well, he's
I don't.
rich and he's whiny and he's pouty.
I mean, he's rich, but the whininess is because they're trying to drag it out of him. I mean, yes, he was. I mean, I think it's very human, and that's what ultimately the Rocky movies are supposed to be. All of them, they're
You
supposed to
saw
be.
Rocky struggle and overcome. We've yet to see that with him. In
I
3
mean, it
films, in 3
was.
films, you can't get it and you're on your own? Come on.
I think no, I think it's a different overcoming because this is the opposite of Rocky, who couldn't make a success of life. I love him. We love him, but Rocky could not really succeed anywhere. It wasn't until Rocky 5, no, 6 that he had a restaurant, and he has that because he's able to tell his boxing stories while he goes around. He doesn't really do any of the cooking or anything like that. It's just him telling his stories, and that's the novelty of his place. And it's named after his wife. That's nice. Yes, I agree. I like those touches. But Rocky was not a successful figure anywhere outside of the ring.
All the more relatable to the average human being rather than a rich kid with rich kid problems.
I mean, it's a story. Well, the first movie is about him building himself, respecting his father, even though coming to respect his father while trying to also write him off because, hey, he was never anything in my life. And so he has to struggle to find his place in legacy. The second one is actually kind of handling Rocky's legacy with facing Drago's son. And then also, hey, my dad got killed by this guy's dad. So there's bad blood there.
Again,
Uh,
that's not his character though. So in the first two Creed movies with Stallone and with Drago and all that stuff, that was by far the most compelling stuff to it. And so if you don't really watch the Rocky series and you're starting off with the Creed films, I can maybe understand how this is your baseline. And again, I'm not trying to negatively say anything about it because we love Rocky and a lot of the characters and all that kind of stuff. But that stuff is done well because we've been emotionally invested in it. And I'm still waiting to find
Okay.
the one thing about Adonis here over 3 films now again that makes him like, hey, we can root for him. I mean, he seems like
Well,
he's a nice guy and he's a good guy, but he's just boring. He
uh,
hasn't overcome anything. Like I say, he's not relatable. And you've had
e-
3 films to
s-
establish this. So how is he heroic? He's not.
but these films, even the Rocky films, they're the same thing. I could say it's a guy, oh, he gets his one shot and he's overcoming that. That's happening to him. His
There,
character is defined by his will to fight. And that goes to Adonis as well. His will to continue to fight. And when it comes to this point, he feels like that his former brother is obviously not really a brother, but they were like brothers. When it comes to facing him, he has to do it for his family. That's how he feels. He has to take the monster that he created. He has to face the monster that he made. And
he didn't create this monster. He
see,
didn't do any
but
of
he
that.
did.
No, he didn't. His well, I even can't remember the damn guy's name. Not
Uh,
Adonis.
Damien.
Damien. Big Dame, right? So Dame was protecting his boy. He looks like the hero. He took a risk at a very pivotal point in his life early on, and he
Yeah,
shits on him. And then he's okay with it at the end? That's bullshit. And the one thing too about brother relationships is the older brother always wins. So wait, Adonis should have won this fight.
I
That's the nature of brothers or that
I
kind of
have many
relationship.
brothers. I have many brothers, Rob.
That's fine. You know,
But
uh,
I'm
all
telling
we
you,
do.
it's just see. There's sides to it. Yes, obviously, him leaving him to face that alone and not trying to seek him out more. That was on him,
Yeah,
and
it's a shitty
they're
thing to
both
do.
they both forgive each other in the end for one him coming in, Dame coming in and making himself like uh crap. Trying to remember Rocky 3.
Clubber.
He's trying to it
Disagree
is
totally.
Clubber with
Clubber was
depth.
not smart. No, Clubber was a street guy. This guy's in prison. He was smart about what he did, and he set the whole thing up as we see. Clubber wouldn't have been able to pull that off. He didn't have the foresight. He was just a force of nature.
I think okay. Well, I mean, I think that there's the force of nature with character for Damien here, which is what makes him such a
Damien was
compelling
shrewd.
character.
That's what made him compelling, therefore more interesting than a boring rich guy that barely knows how to pout and takes a earful from his woman because he doesn't know how to, keep shit going in his family. I
I
mean honestly.
I no, I still don't see Adonis like that. I
I,
don't know
I'm
why
glad
you
that
see him
you
like that.
don't
I don't.
because that's what it was on the screen. It's and in some of the exchanges they had too. I like Tessa Thompson. I think seems natural in her role. I don't know why they chose to have a going deaf sort of thing with their character. It's there, that's fine, and it's with their daughter, but there's nothing about it that elevates anybody character wise in this movie. Even Drago's son's in here, right? What the hell do they do with him? Sparring partner for a minute or two. And then when he comes on, you're like, man, I don't want to see Adonis because look at fucking Drago. Jesus Christ, the guy looks like a super heavyweight.
I thought it was good to have
I
him
want
on
to see
here.
Drago and Dane go at it. I don't want to see a middleweight go at it. I mean, look, here's my closing
But
thought.
with Rocky, even though he was jacked, yes, he was smaller than most people that he faced.
That's
I
fine.
don't see why you apply this to Michael when it was pretty much the same
He has
for
that same
Rocky.
160, 70 pound, body weight superhero look, and while his hand speed looked good and the way they shoot it with the camera shots and the steady cam and all that, that looks good. That's obviously miles improved over, you know, back when it was when Rocky was doing it, and they were trying to figure out how to do that really well, right? So that stuff's cool, and I like how they modernize it with First Take with Steven Smith and calling out in all the modern pop culture how it would be done today. That's cool. So they did a real good job of making it feel like it's in today's time and all that. But again, I'm looking at them going, you know, Rocky was a stiff. We know that. And he was a clubber. He was a brawler. He was not a boxer. And it's just like Apollo Creed says at the end of there was the third movie. He goes, "Remember, Rocky, you fight great, but I'm a great fighter. There's a difference." And so we understand that from Rocky. That he was basically a bum and got lucky and all that. No matter how hard he worked, his opponents were handpicked. And there's obviously personal reasons for why he fought. So yes, he was not as big as the others. And Stallone's, you know,
Yeah.
obviously been a bodybuilder.
It's
Michael B. Jordan, when you look at him before his transformation for the first film, was, let's be honest, he's a stick. I mean, decent looking guy, did some modeling work and all that kind of stuff. He's in an anime, put some of that in here. When he transformed for that first film, you're like, shit, this guy put in the work. He looks great. But even Will Smith, who put on weight for his movie role way back then, I think still looked a hell of a lot better. I mean, so there's something to be said about looking lean and cut and having razor abs and all that. And there's something to be said for looking like a boxer. He does not look like a boxer. He looks like a 18 to 20-year-old middleweight at best, and just does not have the size relative to everybody else. And that's not his fault because he worked really hard at the role and he put a lot of time into it. And I respect that. But when you see these other guys again on the screen, they dwarf them by comparison. They just look like natural athletes rather than a movie-made, manufactured one. It just, again, further emphasizes the point that nothing has really been done to establish Adonis as a character that's grown or gotten better over 3 films. He's the same guy as basically the first movie. The way he looks, the way he acts, everything else. I've seen no character growth in him at all.
I I just I don't agree. I don't.
I know.
I think with every film, when he's faced what he's had to,
Of course, he's going to
it's better for him. It's better for him in the end. Going ahead and seeing them like friends, him and Drago in this movie, that was great. I loved that. It was a nice touch. I was happy to have him back.
How does that
because
make
of that.
Adonis's character better?
What?
How does that make Adonis's character better? How does it elevate the character of Adonis? That he has a hitting partner we see for 30 seconds? That's him? Oh, yeah, I forgot about this character. It was compelling in the last film. Makes you think about the last film.
I mean,
Well,
but that's what these are. The films are chapters of their life.
Nothing in here has elevated him in any scene. There's some good shots, but again, elevating the character, he's the same character 3 movies in now.
But Rocky was the same at the end of every movie.
I disagree.
Well, you can say
we're not talking about the Rocky movies,
but he never learned. That's why he had to keep fighting. That happened multiple times.
No.
He had to keep on fighting.
Each one was
in
a
3
different
was to defend his honor, but because of money, he had to for 2 other movies, and then he wanted to fight one last time. That was when he was old.
What does the Rocky movies have to do with the statement that's being avoided being discussed is what's elevated the character of Adonis? And how does it work? It's great. Drago's in there. Hey, it's nice that they're buddies. How does that elevate this character? How does that move his character forward towards this confrontation? It doesn't. They talk for a little bit. They spar a little bit. That's it. They just put him in there to put him in there is my point.
I mean,
that in itself doesn't do anything. You can have a bunch of great ingredients sitting there on the counter, but you actually have to do something to them with the right ratios and mixtures and order and temperatures and all that stuff to make a good film.
You're seeing it as a half put together meal, but I see the full meal. I see Adonis as he's going through this. This is what he's going through. Every movie is what he's going through. That's what Rocky goes through in his movies.
Again, we're talking about the Creed movies. We're not talking about the Rocky movies.
Okay, fine. If you don't want to compare, this is what he's going through right now. That's what every single one of these movies is supposed to be. It's a chapter of life. The fight at the end is to go ahead and kick it off, just to go ahead and give you what you're fighting towards through the movie. But everything else is life stuff. It's what's happening currently. What are they facing? what is happening in Adonis's life right now.
Outside of his fight,
The
what's his big
force,
problem?
huh?
Outside of the fight that we're going to have, which is the whole plot of this movie, what does he have that he has to struggle and overcome?
Well, I mean, if you forgiveness of self, really, because the past came
For
back.
acting like a shithead and not visiting the guy that saved his life, when he acted irrationally for whatever reasons. He looks like a punk, a street punk.
No, he looks like a human. Oh well.
Final thoughts, sir.
Well, final thoughts. I think that this was surprisingly great. It's seriously in the Rocky franchise because it is still part of that, even with Rock only getting like 2 mentions.
Right.
Should have been a photo or something, just something. But I think that this is really up there. It's better than the other 2 Creeds, I think, and I did really enjoy the first one, and I think there were parts of 2 that were great, but I think that's where the mixing, I didn't see the full meal there. But here, I dined well that evening in the theater, and in a Rocky rewatch, this is definitely going to come up.
As Comic Book Frog says here at Chat Creed 3 straight to DVD. That's what it felt like, sir. Hey, this is pretty good for a DVD release. Yeah, not feeling it with this one, but I will agree with you on some of the positive points because, I mean, honestly, I did not hate the film. Trying to talk about it, technically, I think it's done very well. The fact that I guess this is his first directorial debut, I think that's a very positive note to him. He's a good-looking guy. Maybe that's just how today's movies are, kind of boring and not exciting. In all seriousness, it's not like 40, 50 years ago type of a movie. It's a movie by today's standards for today's people and crowds, and so that's not a bad thing. We'll see. Obviously, it's doing very well, and I do think, like you, it's the best of the 3 Creed movies. At least the fact that it's completely his own, because I think without Stallone's rub and touch on it, it's very distinct, and I think that in itself is positive for the franchise. Now, whether I like it or not is a different issue, but obviously it's doing very well. I hear there's supposed to be spin-off characters and stuff. I was interested in his daughter, the whole fighting thing. Okay, that's kind of cool. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll be sure to talk about it here on the Xtreme Movie show. Yeah, Comic Book Frog, I didn't even know they were making it either. I mean, I kind of did. I just didn't know when it was coming out. I'm like, oh, it's out already. Let's talk about it here. So thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching. Obviously, we're going to talk more about the Rocky movies and Creed movies, too. I think it's worth a deeper dive at some point here on the Xtreme Movie Show. So, Professor Pixel, thank you for showing up tonight. We're going to call it and see it. I'm going to ignore the gratuitous comments in chat. Everybody else, have a good night. As always, stay extreme.